Hi there and welcome back to the series on creating a Laravel Voyager financial website. I'm Goreti Golden, and before we get started we can have a quick recap on what I covered in the last video. So in the previous video we looked at what an entity relationship diagram is, and I also shared insights on some of the entities that we are going to be working with in terms of building the whole project for both the admin dashboard and then the website. Then we also drew some of the entities that were identified. We managed to add their relationships. So this is going to be a continuation of our previous video, and we are going to go ahead and complete drawing the entities and also adding the relationships between all these other remaining entities for the whole project. So we had ended on creating the entities for the service types, and for this application we are going to have service types like savings, then loans, then financial literacy, and these are going to be displayed on the navigation bar such that for each service type we have a service page. For example, on the savings page we are going to have the account types and the account features and also the benefits, and then regarding the loans page we are going to have the loan applications, the loan calculator, the loan steps, and more information regarding the loans. And we shall also have a financial literacy page that will require working with financial tips and the financial advice entities. So therefore we must also create entities for these other remaining sections. So we had created these other entities for the hero section, the why save with us, and the account type features, then the account type, and then the account type benefits. So now to continue with drawing the entities, we are now going to switch to member management. And in terms of the member management, we do have the members, and we are going to therefore have a member entity, and some of the attributes that I have defined. We do have the ID, the title, the first name, the last name, other name, physical address, or we can just keep this to the address precisely, then the gender, mobile number, then the other mobile number, their date of birth and their workplace, then the status, that is if for example the member is active or inactive. We're going to have members applying for loans or sending in their loan applications, and we must keep track of each loan application, in that a loan application is going to belong to a particular member. So it would be a good approach for us to have the members table alone, such that we also have the loan applications table alone, in that in terms of the loan applications we are going to pass in the member ID to keep track of the person that has sent in a loan application request. So this is going to have a member ID, and therefore we can now go ahead and design our ERD or our entity diagram for the member. So with ERDs you can always duplicate an existing entity. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one, and having duplicated it, this is going to have a name for the member, and each member is going to have, or is going to be uniquely identified by the member ID. And the member ID, since it's going to be the primary key, it must not be null. So each member is going to have first name, and we can keep the validation to this, but this is pretty much, so we can have 150, and the first name is going to be required. Then we are also going to have the last name, so I can copy this up and paste it here. So we are going to have the last name, then the member email, and the email is also going to be a string represented by a variable character, and it can have a maximum of 200 characters. Then the email is not going to be null, so not null will be enforced, and each email address must be unique to ensure that we do not have redundant data in terms of the email addresses. So we must pass in a unique constraint on the email attribute. Then having created that, so first name, last name, other name, but other name can be optional, so we can just keep this precise. Then in this one we do not have the email, so I'll go ahead and add the email address as well, so that we keep track of it, such that in case of authentication we can work with maybe the email address, or we can work with the phone number, or we can also work with the email address for notifications via email. So we shall now go ahead and add the address, so you can always duplicate, and having duplicated it you can make use of this one. So we need the address, and the address can have maybe a maximum of 255 characters. Now the address is not going to be null, but we can have people coming from the same address. For example, we can have a member called Gority coming from maybe Kamocha, and some other member also coming from Kamocha. So having added that, we can also go ahead and duplicate this entity, and now keep track of the gender. So we are going to have the gender, and now regarding the gender, you can either be a female or a male. Now for such types, these are always enums, and we are going to have an enum type that must either take in a female or a male property type for the gender, and the enum must not be null. Then sometimes you can always have a default type for the enum, actually a default value, but for now we can keep it precise. Then we also need the mobile number, but we can keep this precise to contact instead of an attribute that has more than one word. So we can have this updated to contact. Then instead of mobile number, we can keep this to other contact. And having added that, we can always duplicate one record. So we are going to have the contact, and the contact is a variable character, and contacts always have a maximum of at least 11 depending on the service provider, but we can have a maximum of 11, which is okay, and then it's not going to be null. And contact numbers, just like email addresses, must always be unique. And having added that there, we can now proceed to the next attribute. So whenever you are drawing ERDs and also maybe identifying the attributes, you must think out of the box. You must try to relate an entity in the normal way. Like if you're trying to identify the entities, look at an entity realistically. And then the attributes must also be in line with what the project is going to achieve. So most of the time, some attributes do not make sense. For example, now if we are keeping track of the date of birth, we could ask oneself, how is the date of birth going to be relevant for this project? So some attributes might be optional, some other attributes might be required depending on what exactly you want to achieve. So for that case, I am keeping away the date of birth, then we can stick to this. So we have the other contact, so I can just duplicate this and have this updated to other contact. So the other contact must also be unique. Then we have the place of work. This can be optional. Then we can also have the status. So we can have a place of work, and this can have a maximum of maybe 200 characters. And then it can be optional. So whenever an attribute is optional, you can leave it now. By default, you do not pass in the not now constraint. And since a place of work can also be similar with for any other member, so we do not have to pass in the unique constraint. Then having added that, we can also have a default image for our member. So maybe after the status, we can go ahead and add the image so that we keep track of it. So we are going to add the image, and it's going to be of type variable character, which is a string. Then we can have a maximum of 255. And most of the times when members are registering, or when users are registering, they rarely upload their images at once. So what we do, we ensure that the image is nullable or optional by default. And most of the times you always have a default avatar image for users. So we shall stick to that approach, and the image will be nullable. So we do not have to pass in any other constraints. Then having added that there, we can also go ahead and add the status. So the status field is only going to come in because of the fact that a member can be active or an inactive member. So we can make use of the gender attribute and paste the content here. Then instead of the gender, this is going to be replaced with a status. So our member can be active or they can be inactive, that is if they are no longer using the system. And then instead of not now, okay, this can be fine, but since we have an enum, we can always update this to a default value. So we shall have a default value of active. So but then sometimes there are cases whereby for you to become a member you must pay some amount of money. So we can have this defaulting to inactive, and these are the attributes identified for now. Then we can also keep track of the accounts that a member can work with. So this can now have member accounts such that a member has the ability of, for example, saving money and making deposits and withdraw transactions. In terms of the member accounts, we can have the members in that every member account is going to belong to a member. So we therefore must pass in a member ID, and that acts as a foreign key within the member accounts table. And since it's a member account, meaning that, for example, you can have a savings account or a fixed account, so we therefore have to keep track of the account type ID. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in the account type, the account type ID. Then we shall also keep track of the balance of this account as of now. Then now, since we are going to have members logging into their dashboards, then it would be a good approach for us to also keep track of the password of each member. So we shall have a password, and having added the password, that means that we can now go ahead and also add a password attribute for a member, and the password is going to be a variable character, a string in other words, and we can have passwords with a maximum of 8 characters. But now in terms of security, we are most likely going to hash the passwords, so I can keep this to a maximum of 255 characters, and the password is not going to be null, so we must pass in a not null constraint. So we can now go ahead and also add the member account entity. So I'll copy this up, but the fact that the member account entity has a few attributes, then I can just keep track of this service type and paste it here, such that having pasted it here, I can drag this entity this side and now update this to member account. And each entity must have a primary key, so we are keeping this there, and the primary key must never be null. Then in terms of the member account, we are going to have a member ID, and the member ID is going to be an integer and it must not be null. And since it is a primary key of the member table or of the member entity, so this therefore defaults to a foreign key. And I'll ensure that this is bold and to also be in bold. Then after the member ID, we are keeping track of the account type ID, because of the fact that each member can have an account type, and also based on the fact that a member can have more than one account type. So you can choose to have a savings account, or you can also choose to have a fixed account or even a joint account. So that means that it's going to be a one-to-many relationship. So we now keep the primary key of the account type within the member account entity. So this is going to be of type int and it will not be null. So having added that there, I'll also ensure that this is in bold. And we do not need the image, but we need the balance for each account type. So we shall have the balance attribute, and balances, for example, you can have a balance of 5,000. So this is going to be an int, and instead of saying not null, we can ensure that we have a default value for the balance. So by default, the balance is going to be 0, and it therefore means that we can have a balance currency. So we can have a balance currency attribute as well, such that the currency is now a string. For example, it can be Uganda shillings, so the maximum value can be 100, and then instead of a default to 0, we can have a default as a UGX. And I also ensure that this is updated here. So we are going to have the balance unit or the balance currency, something like that. So having added these entities there, we have a relationship between the member and the member account. So realistically, you can be a member and you can always own more than one account. So if we do have accounts like a savings account or a fixed account or a joint account, you can either have a fixed account or you can even have a savings account. So that means that for each account that you decide to work with, we must always keep track of your details. We should know that this savings account, having, for example, 2 million shillings, belongs to so and so. So that is why we go ahead and pass in the member ID. And the fact that we want to keep track of the details of that account too, we also pass in the account type ID. So this will also default to a foreign key. And a foreign key is always a primary key that is acting as an attribute in one table but it references to the primary ID within another table. So when we check out our account type, this side, you can see that we have the ID for the account type as the primary key. So I can move this entity here such that since this other member account entity is going to be related to this other, we can drag it here. So having done that, we can now go ahead and add the relationships. So there is a relationship between the member and then the member account. So a member can have more than one account type. So therefore, I will ensure that we add a one-to-many from the member to the member account. So you move this from the member then to the member account, and when I open up the style panel, from the member to the member account, we do have the last end, we do have a one-to-many, and then from the member account to a member, we shall have a one-to-one, because whenever you have more than one account, each independent account is going to belong to you. So each member account will always belong to a member. That is why from a member account to the member entity, we must have a one-to-one. So I will focus this as well, and on this other side, we are going to have a one-to-one. So having added that there, and most of the times you can always add the relationship name. For example, if I added text, if we are to add a relationship between a member and a member account, you can, for example, say owns. For example, a member can own one or more accounts. So then the owns word will always be used to create the association between a member and a member account. But it's always not mandatory, but for purposes of understanding, that is how it is done. So the member account now has a relationship with the account type. So regarding that matter, I will also have a relationship added from the account type to the member account. Account types can have one or more different members. So from the account type to the member account, you're going to have a one-to-many, because when we do have savings accounts, we shall have a number of users that are selecting savings accounts such that they can be using them for saving their money. So therefore, this is going to be used amongst a number of users, and I will have this updated too very fast. And then each member account will belong to a particular account type. Having done that, we can now continue with the other entity, which is the client testimonials. Most of the times whenever you are having a business, there are going to be cases whereby you get feedback from the customers. It can be negative feedback or positive feedback. But in terms of testimonials, most of the times we are always focused on receiving positive feedback that can be displayed within the website. So this can be more like the customer stories or success stories from the clients that are using the products of the financial site or the financial company products. So now when it comes to the client testimonials, of course we must have an ID, and we are passing in the member ID. This is because for each testimonial that we get, it must belong to a particular member. We need to know that if this is the testimonial that has been provided, it belongs to a particular member, so and so, or Great Golden. And yeah, sometimes you can also pass in a title and then the content of the testimonial. So with that shared, we can also have the client testimonial added very fast. So we are going to keep track of we are going to keep in place the member ID, and then instead of the member account, we are going to have, for example, the title of this testimonial. Then the title can be a variable character, and we can have a maximum of 150, and it might be now or not now. Then we shall also have the testimonial. Then we might also have a testimonial which can have a text, and it will not be now. Then for each testimonial, we are going to keep track of the service type to which this testimonial was provided. Like, for example, a user can provide information based on the account type, maybe that they were using, or how they found experience regarding a particular service type or a particular product. So we can keep track of the service type ID, and so having added that there, we shall have the service type ID. So have this added and pasted here. Then the foreign key will be added here, and we can have the title. Then instead of the member ID, we are going to have the service type ID to which the testimonial is going to be shared, because we believe that a user can maybe apply loans or provide feedback regarding our savings accounts and etc. So that is why I'm passing in the service type ID as well. Yeah, so for now that's pretty much it on that entity. So having added that, we can also go ahead and add the relationship, and instead of member account, this is going to be testimonial. Now, so regarding the relationship, you can imagine that you're a client. There are cases whereby you can provide more than one testimonial or more than one kind of feedback. So that means that you can always have the ability of providing more than one testimonial. But each testimonial that you provide is going to belong to you, the member. So it therefore means that there is also a one-to-many relationship type between the member and the testimonial. Okay, so that is why we are having the member ID stored as a foreign key within the testimonial. So once that has been done, we can now go ahead and add our relationship. So when you click on style, from the member to the testimonial, a member can have one or more testimonials, but each testimonial must belong to a particular member. So now regarding the partners, a financial site can have different partnerships with other companies or other organizations. So we can always keep track of the name of the organization, its logo, the website, and the status, whether it's currently in partnership with this company or not. So since it's a standalone or an independent entity, we can just have it added here precisely. So this is going to be partners, and of course you do not have to add the S because entities are stored in a way that the name must always be in singular format. So each partner will have a partner name, and we shall keep track of their logo, and the logo, it's going to be a variable character. We can keep to 255, that can also be optional, and we are keeping track of the website. Of course it's better if this is the website link. That is if they do have a website, by the way, because sometimes some may not have. But since we are in a digital migration, so most of the businesses have switched to being digital farms, so we believe that at least they might have one. So this is going to be a variable character with this much, and it must be unique. So this will be unique because we believe that every website that is going to be hosted is always going to have a unique domain, and that is it. So then we also have the status. So the status, that is if we can keep track of things like the partnership is active or inactive. So that is status, and this can be enum such that we keep track of whether it is active, this partner is still in partnership with this company or not. So that would mean inactive. And by default we can have the partnership in place, so this will be active. Now we're also going to keep track of the company background information, and we shall have an entity for the about us that is going to keep track of the background title, then the background information, then the mission, the vision, the image, the mission image, then the vision image, then the core value information, or I believe this can also be the core value title. And then regarding the company background information, we shall also have the core values of the company such that we keep track of the title, the description, the icons, then the background color. That is because of the fact that we shall have some different background colors for different core value types. Then we shall also keep track of the team members, and each team member will have a name, their position, and their image, and their type, meaning that we can have the director, the CEO, the HR, and etc. And their status because of the fact that a member might leave the company and they are no longer in place, or a member can also be even fired, and etc. So with that said, we can have these designed very fast. So since they're also independent entities, we can just keep them this side. So we shall have the about us, and the about us has the background title, the background info. So this will be background title, and then the background title will default to a variable character. It will be a string, and it's not going to be null. Then we shall also have the background information, and the background information, with the fact that most of the times the info can be really long, so we can have this updated to a text, and it's not going to be null. Then we have the mission, the vision, content. So instead of the website link here, we can have the mission, and it's not going to be null. So then the same information can be reused here for the vision. And we also have the mission and the vision images, or they can also be icons, it doesn't matter. So this is going to be the vision image, and it must be required. So it can be an image or an icon. Then you can also keep track of the vision of the mission image, which is also not going to be null. Then having added all that there, we need the core value information. So I'll have this duplicated as well. Then the core value information is also going to be a string. So core value info, and it's not going to be null. Then having added all those there, we need the core values. So I'll make reuse of this, and paste it here. So instead of the about us, we are going to have the core values, and this will be updated to core value to follow the naming convention. Now each core value is going to have a title, then each core value is going to have a description. So this is going to equate to a description, then the description will be longer, so maybe we can keep this to text, and each core value description must not be null. Then you can also keep track of the icon for the core value. So this is going to be the icon and it's not going to be null. And we can also keep track of the background color. So instead of vision here, this can be equated to the background color, and it's not going to be null. So we do not have a relationship between the core value and the about us, so they are all independent or parent entities. Then we also have the team members. So the team member each has a name, position, image, then the type. So we can make use of the core value, and then this is going to be updated to a team member. Then each team member is going to be having a name, and each team member is going to be having a position, and each position is going to be a variable character. Positions maybe can range to a maximum of 200, and each position will not be null. Then we shall have a type of the team member, and regarding the types, I do believe that we can have an enum, because we can have a team member being a staff member or maybe a board member. So we can have staff or maybe directors. Anyway, we can keep it simple for now, or board member, something like that, such that maybe the default one is staff. Now regarding the status, then we also have the image. So we can have the image, and the image is going to be required, but my bad, we do have an issue here, so this is going to be updated well. And same applies to this part. I hope other entities are okay. Oh no. So the fact that we have been duplicating and pasting, I am going to ensure that all these are updated in the right format. Alright, so having updated that, we can continue with our... So I'll ensure that this is really organized and in the right, because mistakes are human in nature. So having added the attribute for the team member, each team member must have an image, and we shall also keep track of the status such that we know whether this team member is active or inactive. So status, then we shall have an enum. This member might be active or inactive, such that by default this person is active. And just like these other entities, we do not have any relationship between the team members, and the core values are not the about us either. So that will now move us to the contact information, and then the contact form submissions. So we shall also have entities for this, because we must keep track of the information for the contact us and then the contact form submission. Then we shall also have that of the FAQs, the non-applications, and etc. So what I can do regarding the contact us, you can see that it is also an independent table, an independent entity of its own. So you can just have it copied and pasted here so that we make use of it as well. So instead of the team member, we are going to have the contact us, but we can keep this to contact information instead of the contact us. So this is going to be a table for the contact info such that the entity still points to contact info. Now regarding the contact information, we shall keep track of the address, then the address icon that is going to be used, such that this can also be updated with time. So we shall have the address, and it's going to be of type virtual, and it's going to be required. Then we shall also have the address icon, and it's going to be a string as well. Then we shall also have the phone number. So instead of the address, we shall have the phone or the contact number, and shall also have the phone icon, and the contact must be unique. So instead of the phone, we shall have the phone icon, and just like these others, we shall also have the information for the email address. So this will equate to email, and it will also be unique. Then we can duplicate this such that we have the email icon, and it's also going to be required. That's why we have a note now. Then I think here I forgot the Facebook icon. Then same applies to TikTok and Instagram. So we shall have the Instagram name. So Instagram, then shall also keep track of the Instagram icon. Then we shall have the TikTok name, and then but I think it's better we just keep track of the names and then the links, so that we go away with the icons, such that the icons can be kept statically on the front end. So I'll go ahead and remove this. Then same applies to the email icon and the Facebook icon, and same applies to the Instagram icon, so that we just keep track of the links. So we shall have the TikTok Instagram link, then that means that we also need Twitter. So we shall have Twitter, then so Instagram link, Twitter link, TikTok link. So now instead of these icons, I'm just going to keep track of and also the address link is not going to be used. So that means that instead of this, we can have the names that are used for Facebook, for example. So we shall have the Facebook name, then we shall have the Instagram name, then we shall have the TikTok name. Then I'll go ahead and duplicate this so that we cater for the links and also the second contact. And I think that is it for the contact information, unless otherwise. We shall also identify some issues while creating migration tables. So having added that, we also have the contact form submissions, such that we keep track of the username, their email, their contact number, and then the message that they have sent. So what I can do is making use of, for example, the core value entity and pasting the contact and pasting this contact form submissions this side. So the entity can be contact forms, contact form message, maybe, such that for each contact form message you keep track of the name of the person that has sent in their contact form. Then we also keep track of their email. Then we can also keep track of their phone number, and each email address must be unique. Then the phone number will have maximum of 11, and instead of the Twitter link, this is going to be maybe phone 2, and phone 2 will have a maximum of 11, at most 11. And then same applies to this one. And now to be able to update this, we shall ensure that this is also unique. And then we also need the message. So the message can be longer than this, so we can work with the text data type, and it must not be now. So we do not have relationships between the contact information and the contact form submissions. So therefore, I'm going to keep that there. Now the other entities are for the FAQs, the blogs, the contact info, then the loans sections, then the products and etc.